But as you can see now, straight off the bat, we'll go straight into this game, Nick.
So Coldhands immediately keeping Twig of the World Tree, because that card is a card that will just increase your win rate by 5–10% straight away by just playing it on 4, getting the mana. Jambre very likely to keep the Geist here. It's his tech card for this matchup in order to destroy the Naturalize, destroy the Spellstone that the Druid has, and basically delay how quickly they're going to assemble board and force them to react to them. Yeah,
it can be a bit of a pain when you do play against many different types of Druids. Like, I know in the past where I knew to stop using Evenlock ever again, not just because it's out of the meta now, but it's more the fact that obviously you do have to clear cards as much as you can at the start, but always the Naturalizes, which made me overdraw so many times. That's when I was like, yep, I won't be playing that anymore, considering the circumstances. But we'll see how we go from there. And of course, if you guys weren't here from the start, these two players are currently 0-2, and if they do lose this match, that will be the end of their run, and that will be them out of the Premiership. If they do win, they will go 1-2, and they're still in with a chance to try and qualify for one of those spots in the top 8 at EGX. But it's going to be, like I mentioned before, a tall order, but definitely not impossible. I've definitely seen some weird things in my time, and this definitely wouldn't be one of them.
So it's worth noting here that Jambre's already picked up two of the 3 tech cards that he's put in his deck for this matchup. He's already picked up the Ooze, which is going to destroy the Twig of the World Tree before Coldhands can have a 20 or 19 mana turn later on in the game, where he plays like a Malagos, pops the Twig, swipes everything, kills him. And he's already picked up the Skulking Geist, because as we mentioned in the Mulligan, where he can destroy the Spellstone, the Naturalize, and basically slow down what's happening to him, force Coldhands to react to board a bit more, potentially use up some resources. The one card he's missing at the moment is Demonic Project, which will take a random minion from Coldhands' hand, change it into a random demon. So that disrupts the Mali combo, that disrupts the Floop, which he may want to play at some point as well.
Just out of interest, what's your opinion on Giggling Inventor? Now, the funny thing, before this class, we spoke about it a little bit, and we were just like, well, you know, plenty of opinions going about, but what's your opinion? Because as I've seen it drawn, of course, it's definitely one of the best cards at the moment, but what do you think it's like for this deck, or maybe some other decks?
I think that you should put it in every single deck that you can conceivably fit it in, and there should be no other sort of word on it. There recently, there's a meta report that happens every couple of weeks from a team called Vicious Syndicate. They have said that any deck that can fit Giggling Inventor in without being restricted should play it. It is the most powerful neutral card since Corridor Creeper, possibly more powerful, the pre-nerf one, the one that was actually broken. So that's why, as well, as we previously mentioned, there's a lot of Blood Knights floating around. Jambre doesn't have Blood Knight, but this deck has Defile, which can clear up the Inventor, and it has Skulking Geist, for example, which is about to eliminate 3 cards in Coldhands' hand, which is a surprise to Coldhands, apparently, that turn.
You saw on Jambre with it, he was laughing. He was like, yeah, okay, it's going all right for me so far, considering he used that straight off the bat. But yeah, it's like Defile, it's such a good card, and especially in this circumstance now. And it's like, especially for Giggling Inventor, it's such a good counter for it, depending on like the kind of situation you're in, as in now, where it's a perfect time for him to use.
Yeah, he doesn't actually have it at the moment, but it would, immediately clear the board and just give him some pressure, which helps him to fight Coldhands off a bit and make Coldhands use the cards that he wants to save, like the weapon, for example, if he needs to hero power. So I think Jambre is doing very well here. I think he's drawn the right cards, and in a minute he's going to give Coldhands the bad news that he has the acidic Swampoos in hand as well, which I don't think Coldhands will be happy to see.
No, I don't think we're happy to see at all in the slightest. We know how, I think we know how Coldhands reacts sometimes, and not going to lie, in previous matches he has been, you know, he had a little bit of bad luck in some scenarios, and, you know, it's just one of those kind of situations, but he knows how much this means to him. But even now, it's like, playing against a player like Jambre, it's quite strange to see these players. You wouldn't expect these players to be 0-2 straight off the bat. Like, you know, I've played Coldhands a couple of times before. He's a very good player. And I think I mentioned before, he actually knocked me out one of the last events where I think I beat him in the Swiss and then lost him in double elimination. Typical. But but no, do you think it's a little bit weird that these two are actually going 0-2 in a moment going into this matchup? Or do you kind of feel like, oh, it's kind of like how things are panning out? It's like quite standard. It's kind of what you expected.
I think that there's a lot of good players in the Prem, so there's always going to be a little bit of variance. There's always going to be people who drop. I think I'm surprised to see Jambre doing badly, in a word.
Yeah.
I don't think it will continue. I think it's very likely that he does well today and continues to do well and might even make the finals. One thing I did think was interesting, actually, last turn is that Coldhands has played his Death Knight and he's taken the option to take the 0 or the 1-2 spiders as well. And that means that he's made the read that Jambre doesn't have a Defile in hand because he thinks he had played it last turn when the board was set up perfectly for the Defile, like you said. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think that potentially there's a line where Jambre could have held the Defile. So it's a bold move from Coldhands. He's saying, I want to be aggressive, I want to take the board back, and I want to kill whatever's going to come out of your possessed lackey next turn when it pops. Yeah,
it's, I'm not sure to say unlucky, but yeah, of course, he hasn't got the Defiles, which, again, like you mentioned, would it be perfect for this kind of opportunity. He hasn't even had a Hellfire either, so, you know, maybe he can go far as using his stones to get rid of the poison spiders, but
yeah,
we'll have to see exactly how he goes.
His other option is to use the Godfrey, which is actually what he's doing, where he can take his Skulking Geist, which is a nice little play, down to 4 health so that it saves 2 health on the Void Lord that comes out of the lackey. So I quite like that, actually. That's a very neat little play. It also forces Coldhands to now attack with the weapon into the Void Lord, thinking that he'll get the extra mana next turn.
Yeah. And
then Jambre can lay the trap and play the Acidic Swampoos and say, not today, pal.
Yeah, he's basically just teasing him, isn't he, really? It's like, oh, we've got it, oh, we've got it. No. you got to hate people who do that. And one thing to mention as well, that he didn't really have much use of the Plague. It's just been sitting there for a while, and I was waiting for an opportunity to see when he can actually use it. But of course, when it actually goes and gets at least 4 minions on the board, at least he'll have the time to actually use that Plague. Yeah. And then later on, he can use an infestation to at least get something in hand.
So this actually looks like it's a setup for the Plague play. It looks like what he's doing is he's, 1, stopping himself from taking 3 damage, which probably isn't too relevant in this matchup, and 2, setting up to go Plague, hit with the weapon, play an Ultimate Infestation next turn to create quite a big board swing. Jambre's about to give him the bad news, which I'm quite excited for. I'd like to see how Coldhands is going to react to this. He's actually got his own weapon as well, which he might play just so it pulls the demon out next turn for free, and any subsequent demons he gets off the Stonehill Defender.
Yeah, it's weird. It's basically that Ooze has just added insult to injury, really, hasn't it? Of course, he's got the weapon now. He can get, obviously, another Void Lord out if he does, which he doesn't, which is quite lucky for the time being. But, yeah, so it's not a fantastic spot, but we'll just have to see what cards he gets from this infestation, of course, which he does use. Yeah, he'll be looking, gets in hand. He'll
be looking to finish the game as quickly as possible, so drawing as many cards as he can, because his win condition, or the win condition I have identified for him, is that he's going to want to play a Malagos, then after it's killed or dealt with, because the control Warlock has plenty of tools, you can see 2 of them already in Jambre's hand, he'll then want to play the 4 mana Malagos that Floop gives him, and swipe, Moonfire, Moonfire. Or, well, swipe, Moonfire, Moonfire. He can't do 2 swipes.
Imagine.
It would just make things worse.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pain really, because every time you play against any Mali Druid, you know it's all about time. It depends how quick you can get it done, how soon enough you can actually stop him from using it. But of course with that Gloop as well, like you mentioned, it's very great backup for a Mali, of course, if you lose out at a certain scenario. Yeah,
exactly. And sometimes it's just their plan. To play the Mali and say, I don't even care if you kill this.
Yeah, it don't matter. Do you know what? You kill it, that's all right. Got another one, technically.
I've got plenty more where that came from. I think the early builds of the Malagos Druid could do something silly like 60 damage, because they weren't just playing Mali, they were playing with the Twig and the Mali and the Gloop and Faceless, and they were just creating these situations where they Moonfire their opponent for like 21 damage. So I'm glad that that's gone away, because that's a very frustrating way to lose, if anything.
Yeah, I think with this new card, to be fair, the Mali beforehand was actually quite a good swag. It was actually quite good. It wasn't too bad, in my opinion. But, you know, with the added card as well, it kind of gives you a bit more freedom, I'd probably say, after dealing with the mana cost in terms of like what you want to do that next turn. So I'm not really too surprised you see a lot more people playing this Mali Druid compared to before when those cards were released.
Yeah, and I think what Jambre's doing here, because obviously last turn he floated 7 mana, I think he's playing around Plague, which is obvious, but he's saying to Coldhands to come on to him a bit, to try and push the game, because the longer it goes, the more likely he is to get to his Gul'dan, to get to his healing as well, which gets him slightly out of range of where the Mali will be, because Coldhands' ideal combo here is going to be something along the lines of Alexstrasza, Mali, and then immediately Floop Mali spells, hoping that Jambre hasn't healed up too much by then. As we can see, he's got the Gul'dan. he's got the Stonehill, which he'll look for a demon that can be pulled here as well with the weapon.
Yeah.
And it's very
Wow.
It's looking like he's not going to have a problem with board presence.
No.
It's just going to be a matter of whether Coldhands can draw his combo quick enough, and whether Jambre can either beat that or by healing out of range or by just killing him. Because, I mean, right now you can see he's got 9 attack on board already. It's quite a threatening amount of damage that Jambre can offer going the other way if Coldhands wants to draw and try and find that condition. Yeah,
it's not something you really want. Of course, he's already had 2 Void Lords in the process. With his weapon, he's going to get a 3rd one on the board so quickly as well. And it's, you know, it's just a massive pain to deal with in that kind of circumstances. Yeah, sure, fair enough, it doesn't do too much damage, but in the long run, it will affect you to that extent. But at least Coldhands does have his weapon to get free arm up every single time if things get a little bit iffy. And of course, he does have that plague where if he does destroy one of the Void Lords, then of course he can use that plague to kind of, you know, secure his place and survive as long as he can in case the situation does arise.
Yeah, it's a difficult turn this for Coldhands, because what he really wants to do, and the optimal turn for this turn, is to swipe and use the Death and Decay and clear as much of the board as he can, killing the Void Lord, killing the things it spawns. But what he really, really wants to do is actually kill his opponent, so he needs to keep the swipe and keep the Death and Decay, so that when he plays the Mally and then plays the 4-mana Mally, he can then combo with both spells and any Moonfires that he has as well. So that's a turn where he's decided that he doesn't need the swipe, and he also wants Jambre to not play around as much as well, because Jambre will see that and think, oh, less damage in hand, what can go wrong? So it might be a tricksy play that he's gone for there, a little not bluff, but a lead him down the wrong road type move, or it might be that he's just throwing away damage. So we'll see where this goes from here. If he uses the Death and Decay, because obviously it looks good.
Yeah.
Deal 3 damage to all minions and everything has 3 health. You're laughing. It'll show that he is not worried so much about his win condition. He sort of wants to take control of the board instead. If he Alexstrasses him in the face and sets his health to 15, it will show that he's actually thinking about trying to kill his opponent with a combo. So I'm excited to, well, I'm interested to see what he does here. See whether he goes to the Alexstrasza, whether he armors up, or whether he draws. He might even just play a Spreading Plague, because again, that's some very, very juicy looking value. He could potentially branching paths it and create 7 Sen'jin Shield Masters for 10 mana.
Yeah, it wouldn't be too bad, because of course, like anyone, you'd rather try and get rid of that Void Lord first. So at least if you get 3 more Void Walkers on the board later on, you would only be able to get 1 up, and then it's a lot easier to use that Death and Decay. You know, you get more value out of it, you could say. And it makes a lot more sense. But in all fairness, as long as he keeps using that Explore Darkness every single time, it'd be in for a good running. So not only is he just going to try and survive, there's possibly a chance he could get board control. But of course, he does have that Twisting Nether. Yeah. So just waiting for him to use that at some stage.
I don't know if it's a mistake, but it's definitely a different line to go for this, where he's again... He said, oh, I don't want to draw my cards, I want to take the board back. But against a Control Warlock, they have Defile, they have Twisting Nether, they have a plethora of taunts that he can play. His hero power deals 3 damage, and his Despicable Dreadlords deal 2. I think that that's a bit of a foolish line to take. I think that's a bit of a, oh, I want to get board back, I'm going to do this play that looks really good, but what it does is it sacrifices his win condition for later on in the game. So, although... yeah, it's great, you've made 7 Sen'jin Shield Masters. He hasn't drawn the 2 cards, or he hasn't got the armor, so he's not surviving as long to get the cards that he wants. Because, well, because a lot of this just gets cleared very quickly and immediately.
Yeah, and of course, yeah, it's like I mentioned before, even if he does have that Twisted Nether, there's absolutely no point in using it as of yet. Until he's absolutely in a bad spot, then that's completely understandable, leaving 3 Void Walkers on the board after. But to be fair, in the kind of circumstances with his minions and what he's got on the board entirely, I think it's in a good spot. I don't think it's actually too bad until he finds out he has that Death and Decay. That's
a top deck that changes things, I think, a bit, because he can buff his minions. I hope he's counted this. It could be quite close. He can buff his minions. He can trade into the Void Lord. He can play the Death and Decay, and he can push a lot of damage here. I don't think it's enough. I think he's 2 damage off lethal. Or actually 7 damage off lethal. But it's a very, very aggressive play there for him. He also sacrifices his Alexstrasza a little bit as well. By putting Jambre this low, it means that he can't use that anymore.
Yeah, it's good though because of the fact that he knows he don't need to take out those 2 minions anyway, even after when he does any damage to him and gets 2 damage by the end of his turn. it won't make too much of a difference in all fairness. And it's like you said, you know, he needs to try and find out a way. Is it going to push him to use that Twisting Nether, or maybe use his spells to at least gain at least a bit more health, including his hero power on top of that? But is it all worth it though?
Well, he can heal back up to 18. He can use both spellstones and a hero power, heal up to 18, trade in a 4-1, and suddenly, what's Coldhands going to do? He's going to play Alexstrasza. So maybe this was actually, I was pretty quick to call it foolish, but it might have been a genius stroke from Coldhands, expecting the card he'd draw to be exactly what he needed to push the damage and make this very aggressive play. So I think that there's a way out for Coldhands here, a way where he can get an Alexstrasza on the board and potentially win the game through it. Or, well, as long as Giggling Inventor doesn't exist.
Yeah. Even though he's got two sitting in hand nicely, which ain't too bad, is it? You know, we're talking about it before, but having two sitting there, at least it'll keep him covered for a little bit longer. And of course, like you said, he does have Alexstrasza. Of course, won't make too much difference as of now, but it's nice to have something beefy on the board just to keep in there. Of course, you have that Lich King as well. So he's not out of options. He's got plenty of options to go through so far. At least he knows he's got nothing on the board, nothing too much to deal with. At least get some decent card draw, but the only problem is now, as you can see, going straight into that fatigue, but you have to see how long for.
Yeah, so if Coldhands had played a more draw-heavy game, where he'd gone for the combo pieces, he would, at the moment, he'd have an extra Moonfire in hand. He may or may not have a swipe. He could have used one of them because you don't need both for the combo. And he'd have a Death and Decay. The question really would be whether he'd be at a healthy enough life total in order to survive. I think he might have been. So it's interesting to look at the diverging lines that have been taken here. What I like is that Jambre's just top-decked his he just drew the third tech card that he needed for this matchup and taken the 1 in 3. He obviously knows exactly what Coldhands has got in his hand, or the 2 in 3, because he hits Mally or the Floop. And as again, stopped Coldhands in his tracks with another tech card. It's good to see them working.
Yeah, that's the main thing, because we questioned that before. We were kind of like, well, it's not like anything about ballsy players or anything like that. Of course, we know what kind of situation they're both in, kind of their results. And, you know, I've said it before, it's like, you know, maybe some players will play a bit more standards and maybe not anything off meta, but, you know, some of these tech choices, like you mentioned before, it's actually really helped. And, you know, it's quite risky, but, you know, it's working out for him, especially straight off the bat. We'll see what happens, obviously, with his other decks as we go out through the match. But so far, it's been good in this first game.
Yeah, I think at this point, it's almost certain to say that Jambre's finished this game off. The Alexstrasza comes out and he can just taunt or heal and sort of hero power it and wait for it to deal with it. And then the Malygos come out and just Twisting Nether. And that's probably when Coldhands concedes, unless he really wants to take Jambre to real-life fatigue, which is it's a real win condition.
Just to prolong it a little bit longer.
Prolong it.
So I didn't want to go home. It's fine.
Wear him down. Wear him down until he concedes in real life. That's what he should do. But,
just to let him know, anyway.
He's actually played the Malygos first, which is interesting. And it does the same thing as the Alexstrasza. It sets his opponent down to 15, but now he doesn't have a Malygos and a Moonfire in hand and has an Alexstrasza instead. So, interesting plays from Coldhands there. I think that Jambre will probably just pull the trigger on the Twisting Nether here.
Yeah, he knows by now he's in fatigue. He's run out of cards, and the worst thing is the fact that he's got 2 now, which is completely useless at this time. It's a shame he didn't really have it at the start. It would have helped with those extra 2 mana crystals, but a bit late now. But yeah, of course, completely useless at this stage. It's just a matter of when he wants to use it. But in my opinion now, like if there's any other time to use that Twisting Nether, he kind of has to. But I think he's just going through every option to begin with to make sure it is the right idea. But by the look of things, it looks like he probably will. Yeah,
the issue obviously with it is that using the Twisting Nether feels horrible when you're actually removing a lot of your own minions. But he can plan ahead. He knows that there's literally only an Alexstrasza left and a swipe and hero powers to potentially wear him down. So if he can just play the Plated Beetle instead of the hero power, because the hero power doesn't matter if he's going to be set to 15, and Shroom up next turn, he can actually just grind the Alexstrasza down himself to kill Coldhands. He hasn't even healed.
He thinks, oh, why not, you know? But of course he has that Librarian to get some card draw as well. His Hellfire came, well, a bit late, but it's here finally after countless turns anyway. But yeah, it's just a shame because like it could have done with that Defile, especially that Defile at that one point when you had the giggling inventor from Coldhands earlier, or even that Hellfire, to be fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, he's had it a little bit too late. But you know, maybe it could be part of his win condition if he, because now technically at any stage in time he will have 6 damage a turn whenever he feels like using that Hellfire.
Well, I think he's won this game, and I think what he's doing is he's actually just setting up so that Coldhands dies next turn unless he does something defensive, which is a trait of Jambre I like, where usually he's playing a mid-range deck, and what he looks to do when he's playing a mid-range deck is to set up these turns where his opponent has to do something very defensive or reactive instead of looking to kill him. Here he's done a very, very similar thing where instead of dealing with the Alexstrasza like sort of I predicted or thought he might do, he's actually just forcing Coldhands to hero power and save himself from dying next turn, setting up lethal with the Hellfire and the hero power.
Do you feel like it was the right decision to maybe use that second infestation? Because obviously he went straight to fatigue and maybe could have done something a little bit more differently, but do you feel like it was the right decision?
I think it might have been right in the moment. I think that Coldhands took an interesting line that game anyway, where he decided not to draw with his other cards, maybe to use the other infestation. So, interesting lines, interesting choices from Coldhands. They didn't work that time.
Nah, sadly they didn't. Missing those 2 Defiles, those Hellfires right at the beginning we could have had, but managed to take it away anyway, so it just shows, you know, didn't even matter after all that case entirely. But yeah, no, because with Coldhands now, he's down 0-1. He's getting in quite a predicament now, but do you reckon you use that money again straight afterwards compared to all the other decks which we actually know of?
I think he should be worried. Jambre's clearly come with the plan to beat the Druid, and Jambre's just beaten the Druid. So he might... I'd like him to not play the Druid again, to cool off, to take a different deck, to start thinking about the game, or to keep thinking about the game, and to just try and get wins on the board. I think that's important for him. If he can get some wins on the board, it'll feel better for him moving into potentially a 2-2 game or some other game where he will say to himself, oh, I just need to get lucky, I just need this one moment in order to win.
Just didn't get it.
Yeah.
It's a bit blunt, because those scenarios can happen in so many times. Like, you know, we saw it with Ben when he high rolled like more times than anything, especially like in one of the worst, I wouldn't say one of the worst matchups, but, you know, quite heavily unfavoured. And when I was just watching, I was just like, yeah, it's just one of those things, isn't it? But certainly for him, it won't be the case anyway, as we go into it again, and Coldhands straight away with that Manny Druid again, as we noticed from last time.
Yeah. It's an interesting matchup, this one, where you can choose to play certain cards in your Manny Druid to shore up this matchup, like Oaken Summons and Iron with Golem, and Coldhands hasn't gone for that. He's actually also removed a piece of armor gain and draw in one of his howls, and is instead playing a copy of Starfall. So he's teched a little bit to beat potential aggro, which is a bit very Jambre-esque. Not this week, but usually it is. And as a result, might be punished for it. Jambre here has the opening.
Oh, wow.
He has.
I love how you said that even before he topped Wildgrave and then straight away off because of that Nourish late. But another thing you've got to remember as well, of course, with Jambre, he does have that fledgling anyway. So if he does throw that out turn 3, again, you know, Coldhands has that swipe anyway, which can coin out at any point. Well, it doesn't even need to coin out.
No, I was saying Jambre has the opening. Jambre has the, I'm going to play a Diamol, make it a 5-3, and then play a fledgling, and you've got to start answering everything I do for the rest of the game. Coldhands is already at 19 health. It's turn 4. What does he even swipe here? He has to choose which one of these things he leaves alive, which is not a good position to be in.
Yeah, it's so difficult because, of course, with the fledgling, you could have anything. You know, you can always get like +3. You can have obviously the Divine Shield. There's so many different ways you can actually deal with that, especially with the stealth in this kind of situation. It's like, do you want to swipe it now so that at least that way, if it does use stealth and you feel like that, then it'll just keep winding him down. But one thing I do feel sorry for with Coldhands as well is the fact that if he's playing against another control matchup in any way, like, you know, he'll be in a very good spot.
Oh, it'd be in a great spot.
Very healthy spot. You know, he'll probably be on literally, what, like 9 or 10 mana by, like, you know, like turn 5 or something silly like turn 6?
It'd have 20 mana by turn 5, and it'd be doing everything he wants to do. Coldhands there chose to coin out the Giggling Inventor, probably because he heard me talking about how good it is. And it's actually worked out quite well for him. He gets to follow up the swipe and clear the board. And Jambre now has to redevelop straight into this. Fortunately for Jambre, he can redevelop straight into this. And now Coldhands' decision to not either ramp or swipe last turn has left him having to do it this turn, where his opponent can now Deadly Poison or Flame Elemental, play a Crazed Chemist and start, again, just working away at his life total very, very quickly before Coldhands has a chance to sort of draw the cards, ramp enough and react to that.
I just feel sorry for Coldhands, man. It's like, literally, this hand would have been perfect last game. Like, even with the even the Mallies, even though it's a little bit too early to have it, you know, you couldn't ask for much. But now in the kind of situation where, you know, at least he's got the play to delay things a bit further. But of course, Jambre is going to expect that, so he's going to be quite careful and going to watch out for the amount of minions he's going to put on the board. Yeah. And of course, he does have that poison for his weapon later on, which is going to help him just as much. But one thing he's got to take into account is that with his nourishes, he's got to decide whether, you know, does he need his card draw to try and deal with this odd rogue, or does he want to be, you could say, really greedy and actually go for those 2 mana crystals? But I think that's one of the decisions he's trying to make at the moment.
I think when you've got 2 nourishes in hand, you want to go for the ramp. You want to ramp this turn to 8 mana, and then next turn you can play Branching Paths and Nourish to armor up and draw at the same time. He's decided that's not the case. He's saying, I need to find answers this turn. I need to find a spellstone, and I need to start killing things, which is fair enough. I mean, sometimes when you're staring down a defeat, you're already 0-2, the pressure's on. He just doesn't want to die. I think that may be working against him here. And you said it yourself, Jambre, a wily player, a clever player. Yeah. He's not going to play the Flame Elemental. He's going to play the Deadly Poison and the Crazed Chemist, put as much damage in here as possible, and then kill him with a Leroy next turn.
Yeah, you literally took the words right out of my mouth there. Of course, part of his win condition with that Leroy there, straight off the bat, he'll have at least 10 damage on board, even if he doesn't have those minions to start with, so it won't be too far off. It's just a matter of how and when. And, you know, you saw Jambre just then keep his fingers crossed. He knows the predicament he's in. We know, obviously, we can see it for ourselves. It's just a matter of Coldhands, if he can actually deal with this. Even if he didn't draw that first card the first time round and just went for another 6 armor, I'm not sure if it would have made too much difference, but we'll have to see if he will regret this, considering Jambre's state. Yeah,
so from our caster view, we can see that there's only one play Coldhands can do here, which keeps him in the game, and that's to play the Spreading Plague. But he'll be thinking, well, there's a Flame Elemental in hand already that I know about. I want to get more value out of that. He might just Starfall. And that's not good enough because the Leroy's there. Yeah, as we see. So Jambre will have hoped not to see the Spreading Plague there, knowing that it's probably the only out. And as a result, has won the game. Pulls the trigger. Hello, Leroy. See you later, Coldhands.
Yeah, you can tell from Jambre now. He's obviously done that straight off the bat. And, yeah, I still feel sorry for him. I found I said it a third time around, but it just is kind of one of the situations. So, of course, Jambre will finish things up. Take this with perfect lethal. And already now, Jambre 2-0 up. Yeah. After that situation, but yeah.
It's pretty quick.
It was pretty quick, yeah. It's just a shame you have Wild Growth and then you could have gone straight to Nourish and then another Nourish and then be almost 10 mana within the 6 turn mark. So it's like...
He said, I'm going to kill Druid, and he's killing Druid. Like, it's a pretty good game plan when it works. When it doesn't work, you look like an idiot. But,
oh, yeah, definitely.
But for him, it's perfect. Perfect so far. The next game is the Mage. I think that this is also quite favoured against the Druid. This one, probably more of a risk, though. It comes down to hitting some of the tech that he's put in. He's obviously got another Skulking Geist, I believe. Or, yeah, another Skulking Geist in here to take out the Naturalizers, slow the game down. And he's got the Astromancer that I mentioned before, which is just it's a 7-mana 5/5, summons a minion equal to the cost of the cards in your hand. That's just another bulky minion you can put on the board that can give you a bulky minion, which is... after a Skulking Geist, something that Druid just cannot handle. So again, he's able to put the pressure on, heal if he gets the Jaina. Favoured, definitely favoured.
100%, yeah. And it seems like he won't be playing that, to be fair, which is quite an issue. It's a bit of a pain, like just before cast, you go, right, hopefully in this kind of version, you know, it'll be favoured, blah, blah, blah. And then he doesn't even play it.
Yeah, he doesn't even play it. Coldhands has decided that actually he's done with the Druid. He wants to win some games.
Yeah. You know, forget your advice. You know, we don't want to listen to you. It's fine. I'm just going to switch you up anyway. Absolutely no issues at all.
It's like, I'll just get to 2-2 and then I'll figure out the Druid later. 2-2 looks better than 3-0.
This is it, and of course with Coldhands will be playing an odd rogue of his own. Yeah, with Jambre's Mage. Well, let's see how things go. But as you can see in Jambre's hand already, he does have that Doomsayer, does have that Stoner as well, and now he's got a second.
Oh, he has a hand that reads, stall the game until I remove everything, every turn, and Coldhands just gets sort of, probably, rightfully so.
That's a clean sweep hand, isn't it?
that is a I'm about to 3-0 Coldhands hand. I mean, you never know. It's Hearthstone, there's plenty of cards he can draw. Coldhands has some really good ways out in his deck. Not only is he running Leroy Coldblood, which is what you expect, he's also got Myra's Unstable Element, one of the new cards, which after he throws all of his hand onto the board and says, this is it for me, this is my final gambit, he just plays Myra's Unstable Element, draws the rest of his deck, and he can go again and again, a couple more times. So he has the reload, and he has the ability to react to a couple of board wipes from Jambre. So Jambre might want to try and get into a position where he can use his Astromancers or some of his minions as removal turns instead. So he can trade with his minions and save the Blizzards and the Meteors and the Flame Strikes that he's got for when he doesn't have the ability to react with his board.
Well, this is one of the main things as well, is the fact that, of course, he does have that Fug, so at least you could say it puts him a little bit of leadway, but like we said, he does have another Doomsday on board. If he takes out, that's another story. But if you look, you know, in a few more turns in the future, at least he's got a Blizzard, and he's got a Volcano as well. So he's got numerous ways he can actually try and hold Coldhands off as much as possible. But saying that, he's got a second. he's got 2 Blizzards, a Meteor, and a Dragon's Fury, and for bonus, he's got Ziliax, which is a taunt and a heal and a piece of sort of pseudo removal, and Arcane Artificer. So even if he does drop below the 26, the healthy 26 he's sitting at the moment, he has plenty of chance to recover. I like this as well, where he's playing sort of a Doomsayer Gambit, as someone once described it, where you have a board that your opponent sort of would like to remove quite efficiently as he can with his weapon and his minions on board. But if he does that, the Doomsayer goes off. Or he lets the Doomsayer go off, and then next turn, the Blizzard just clears his board anyway with the minions trading in. As I said, he's set up a situation where he can use the minions as pseudo removal. So I very much like that. Pseudo removal. That's going to be stuck in my head now. You know when someone says something, it just stays on your mind. It's definitely going to be that phrase.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely looking good for Jambre. I wouldn't say it's over. I'd definitely say that Coldhands has an absolute chance here because... Oh, well, that's another.
Yeah, I was just about to say, literally, I think you were just literally just thinking the same thing. It's like, he's got so many AoEs now, he hasn't really got too much to worry about, has he? Even then, he's still got 2 Blizzards, Flame Strikes, he's got Volcano still. And, yeah, it just kind of says it all, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's been a bit unfortunate there. He's taken 6, well, he will now take 6 damage because of this Hench Clan Thug, because he rolled, well, I say he rolled low on the Dragon's Fury. In his deck, he only actually has a Flame Strike, 1 Meteor, and 2 Polymorphs and a Dragon's Fury left. So it wasn't that unlikely to roll a Polymorph. He might have wanted to think about bumping his Raven into the Hench Clan Thug instead, just to leave the 1/1 up, which he could then clear next turn with a Blizzard. So potential interesting play there that Jambre might have missed or not gone for.
Yeah, I kind of feel like now with Jambre, he's got all the pieces to the puzzle. It's just a matter of like making sure you use it in the right way, in the right situation. Like, for example, like in this kind of scenario, like now if you have this many AoEs in this kind of scenario, what would you choose? Because obviously, in this kind of situation, he's got 2 Blizzards, so at least right now, he can use one of them. So at least he takes out the Fug and then maybe take the Blood out next turn with his hero power. But if you look at Coldhands hands, it's like, it's weird because obviously he's still got that Leroy, but it's not really much he can do with it for the time being.
Yeah, he's in a position where he has a way to close out the game, but unfortunately Jambre has far too much health for him to actually close out the game. What he'll be looking for is, as I said, he'll be looking for the Myra's Unstable Element. He'll be looking to try and get there somehow. Unfortunately for him, I don't believe he will. Jambre has so many different options at the moment. He's healed to 23. The board is looking fairly controllable, and he has 3 more AoEs and some soft healing and a Polymorph in hand. It's very hard to see a world where Jambre doesn't sort of take this quite comfortably, but it can happen. He could brick his draws, he could miss out on Jaina, which is a very key component, because if Coldhands was to take this slowly, and potentially he looks like he might be taking it a bit slower, he's held onto the Flame Elemental there as a combo for his Vile Spine, then there could be a world where there's not enough removal potentially in Jambre's hand. Maybe. See, this is nice. This is a board in 1 card. So this is, again, a card that he can play. It provides a board. And Jambre probably has to react to this. He might not. He might just play an Astromancer, to be honest. But it's nice to be able to have that option, to have the board in one card. Oh, that's unlucky.
Yeah, I literally, I was going to say, I was a little bit unlucky to a certain extent, but of course, you mentioned before, he does need that Jaina to, I wouldn't say play that fatigue game, because of course, against odd rogue, you'd need to go to fatigue anyway, depending on the cards they have and how things go. But even though he's in a slightly better spot, Jambre's still got all the pieces of the puzzle to slow this down as much as he likes. He can slow it down for at least a good few turns. Yeah,
he can drop a blizzard and a ping, clear the wait with the board again. But he is running out. He's got... Oh, I said it.
Oh, dearie me. That's all I'm going to say to that.
OK, well, he's not running out as quickly as we thought he might run out. He has drawn all of the AoE. So, again, Coldhands has seen so much AoE already. There's just a chance. There's a chance in his mind that he can make it still, that he won't just limp out of the Premiership 0-3 to Jambre. And honestly, maybe he can. Yeah, I really want to believe he can.
You got a lot of faith in him. You got a lot of faith in him.
Yeah, come on, Coldhands. Oh, that's not so good for Coldhands. But I think there's a chance here if he gets the right cards.
Yeah, I think Coldhands, like, to this extent, like, he's trying to get as much ball control as he can, but he hasn't really got anything to work with now. Of course, that Vilespine, it doesn't really need it until much later on, but even then, with a win condition, Leroy doesn't need that to an extent. And even with the Fungalmancer, he wants to try and get as much value out of that as possible. I don't think Coldhands expected Jambre to have this much AoE. Like, you know, don't get me wrong, every time I play against this kind of mage, normally I have a fair few AoE cards anyway, leading up to when they use Jaina or something like that. But, you know, this is a little bit more than usual, I think, in my opinion.
He's drawn it.
Maybe much more?
it's a lot more than usual. He's drawn... Well, Coldhands would probably say everything he needs this game. I like this play, though. I like what he's doing. What he said is he's saying, I have to kill you as soon as I possibly can because I'm just not winning anymore. He
has no choice, does he?
Yeah, he has nothing else.
If he delays things any further, then it's just going to get to a point where he has absolutely no choice. He's going to be basically playing just for the sake of playing, and he knows that he has no win condition, and there's nothing he can do to go from there. So that's understandable, to be fair.
It's fine, and he's already seen one Arcane Artificer, so he knows that there's no healing in hand, except for this Ziliax that was discovered by a Stonehill. So he made that play thinking that potentially there just might not be any healing for Jambre, and as I said, if Jambre doesn't get the Jaina, if he doesn't get the right cards, then he can just kill him with his dagger over the course of 3 or 4 turns. So it was a good line. It was a good line from Coldhands. I think it was probably the right thing to do, and it could work out for him. It really could. Jambre has no healing left. He's got the removal, but when you're just getting hit with a dagger, turn after turn.
What? We're talking about that Jaina the whole time, but yeah, it looks like now. To be fair, I did think to myself, maybe if we top deck something, you know, a little bit decent, then it'll be okay. Maybe it can make some kind of comeback, because a lot of people with these aggro decks, I always feel like they play a little bit passive, but I'm glad Coldhands isn't one of those players. Just go straight in and then see how it goes from there. But seeing that Jaina is kind of makes me feel like this is the end of the road, pretty much.
I like that Jambre didn't play it immediately as well. If he'd played it immediately, it's actually less health for him than if he had done what he did, where he plays the Meteor and he clears the board again. I really like the patience here. Unfortunately, now he's in a position where he has to do it again and hope that he can't, or hope that the Vicious Fledgling doesn't kill him and that he doesn't top deck the right cards unless he goes Polymorph and Arcane Keysmith, which he's just drawn. So it's a question of sort of balancing out whether you're going to be okay dying to a potential Coldblood top deck and a Wind Fury off the Vicious Fledgling, or whether you want to play it safe by going Polymorph, Arcane Keysmith, and finding a higher chance of the armor card. Ice Barrier. I don't know. That's a really interesting turn. I think.
Go on, what are you going to say?
I think honestly, it's worth looking at the percentages there for Coldblood and Wind Fury. I think it's probably right to play Jaina. I think it's probably right. But Coldhands, what's he going to do?
What would you have done? Would you maybe have polymorphed it and just play it a little
there's
bit
two lines.
Safe,
there's one where you polymorph it and play the Arcane Keysmith and look for an Ice Barrier, which means that you don't die, to a potential South Sea Deckhand top deck or a Coldblood top deck into sort of Wind Fury. Oh, no, not Coldblood, because that doesn't matter anymore because the thing's dead. But I think that the chance of that working is lower than the chance of the Jaina working. So I think it's probably right to play Jaina there and to say that the Coldhands just can't do enough with this vicious fledgling to kill him.
Yeah, I think Jambre was swaying a little bit when he was trying to see what card he won from that. Obviously, from that fledgling. Normally, when you see someone spend a little bit extra time trying to take a turn to see which card they actually want, that's when you kind of know that they haven't got what they actually wanted, which is quite good. So I think that's why he was kind of wiping his sweat off his forehead just to try and get this over with, just to make sure he stays alive as much as he can. But yeah, of course, you know, stating the obvious, it's looking pretty bleak for Coldhands.
Yeah, I think he's lost. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news.
Yeah, you don't want to ruin it for the viewers, you know.
I like that Coldhands is still in his room. I like that he hasn't walked off or
gone to the Vexed House
or given up, because this is it. This is it for his season, unfortunately. It was nice to see him play. I think that there were some weeks where he potentially could have done better. But this week, unfortunately, he's just been beaten by Jambre, who brought the right lineup, who did the right things, and on the day was the better player, I think.
Yeah, no, I think I can definitely agree with that, because of course, he's like you mentioned before, Jambre just wanted to make sure he dealt with his druids. He did quite, not easily, but quite comfortably, I'd say, in my opinion. And he's done everything he can in this kind of matchup. He managed to have all the AoEs and then the piece of the puzzle that he wanted. Managed to finally get that Jaina to kind of say, like, you know, this is the end for you, mate, see you later. And sadly for Coldhands, it's one of those things. With Coldhands, for this season, he's had some good games, he's had some bad games, he's had some really unlucky games, actually, from what I've seen in the past. I've casted quite a lot of his games, and it's a shame, really. But, you know, some people have to go, mate.
Yeah, I think Jambre, actually, it's worth saying, it's not just that he drew the AoE that game. It's that he played it with the right sort of presence of mind. He kept enough back so that in the future, if he needed it, he could play it still. And he has managed that game well. There's some really good game management there where, for example, I like the Doomsayer turn where you play the Doomsayer and the Raven to not get greedy to present the Gambit where the minion stays, and you can use the minion to help clear more minions in the future. So using minions as pseudo removal.
Oh, definitely.
I liked that. I liked how